Hi everyone, welcome to the Old City once again. Today is Gimel Elul. Gimel Elul, the third day of Elul, is actually the 77th anniversary of the passing of the great light of the Jewish people, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook. I had the great opportunity to join the masses who participated in the Aliyah Kever, the visiting of Rav Kook's grave today on his yahrtzeit. And not only to recite the Tehillim there, to recite Psalms there, but I personally had the great honor and merit to recite the Kaddish, the mourner's Kaddish, in Rav Kook's memory on behalf of all those that had assembled. Having returned to the Beit Midrash this afternoon from that experience, I thought it would be a great idea to share with you some Torah from Rav Kook, and actually a story from Rav Kook about this time of year. As everyone is probably familiar, during the month of Elul, the month before Rosh Hashanah, we begin to sound each and every single day the shofar every single morning. So there's a great story about Tikiyat Shofar and Rav Kook. We know that the Rambam in Hilchot Tshuva, the laws of Tshuva, says that we sound the shofar not only because it's a mitzvah that's delineated by the Torah that we should sound the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, but we begin to sound the shofar already in the month of Elul leading up to Rosh Hashanah, because there's a symbolism inherent in the sounding of the shofar. The shofar, says the Rambam, is meant to rouse those from their spiritual slumber and remind them that there's an opportunity to once again return unto their Creator. So there's an incredible story dating back to, I believe, Rosh Hashanah of 1929. Rav Kook spent the last 12 years of his life living in Jerusalem. He began his career here in the land of Israel, first as the Chief Rabbi of Tel Aviv and Yafo, and then after a brief exile to England during World War I, returned to the land of Israel and was named the Chief Rabbi of all of the land of Israel, and eventually comes to live in Jerusalem to assume that post. The last 12 years of Rav Kook's life, he lived in a home known that today is a museum known as Beit Rav Kook, the museum of Rav Kook's house, and it's there that he actually launches his great yeshiva, Yeshivat Merkaz Rav, which today has about 1,000 Talmidim, and it's located in the Kiryat Moshe neighborhood of Jerusalem. But it began in a humble little Beit Midrash attached to Rav Kook's house, not far from Ben Yehuda Street, from the Midrachot, the area that we call the Great Pedestrian Mall of Jerusalem. And this story is actually connected to that pedestrian mall. It seems that that mall was still being built in 1929, and it became known to Rav Kook that among those who would be working on the construction of that planned pedestrian mall were numerous Jewish construction workers, and that they intended to work for the entire Rosh Hashanah, to keep working on the construction project throughout the entire 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Rav Kook, of course, became very troubled by this, and on Rosh Hashanah morning, he handed a shofar to his gabbai, his assistant, and he gave the gabbai, the assistant, very, very implicit instructions. He said, I want you to take this shofar and bring it to the construction site. Again, it was just a few feet, a few hundred yards maybe from his home. I want you to bring this shofar to the construction site, but I want you to say not a single harsh word to anyone, just merely recite the blessings and sound the shofar. So the gabbai followed Rav Kook's instructions. He went to the construction site. He didn't say a single harsh word to anyone. He merely proclaimed the blessings with the strongest voice he could not muster up. And he sounded the sounds of the shofar. And slowly but surely, many of the construction workers began to cease working and returned with the gabbai back to the synagogue to join Rav Kook in his little synagogue for his Rosh Hashanah tefillot. At the end of the tefillot, at the end of the morning service, the gabbai, the assistant, went over to Rav Kook and asked him the following question. He said, Rabbi, I don't understand. Surely had you, the chief rabbi, gone to the construction site, all of the construction workers would have ceased working. They would have been so ashamed to see the great figure of Rav Kook come to their construction site that they all would have ceased working. So Rav Kook put his arm around the gabbai and said, no, you don't understand. My intention in sending you there was not, God forbid, to embarrass a single soul. As much as Chilul Yom Tov, as much as the desecration of the holiday Rosh Hashanah pains me, says Rav Kook, to the inner core of my entire being, what pained me more was to think that some of our brothers might go through the entire 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and not be privileged to hear the sweet sounds of the shofar. So what do we do with this story? What was it that Rav Kook was so concerned about? What are those sweet sounds of the shofar really all about? The Shlomo Rebbe, the Netivot Shalom, says something very powerful. He says, really inherent in the sounds of the shofar, there's really a dual message inherent in the sounds of the shofar, a dual symbolism, if you will. The Shlomo Rebbe says that not only does the shofar represent, so to speak, the proverbial collective voice of every single member of the Jewish people calling out to Hashem, but so too the sounds of the shofar represents the proverbial voice of Hashem speaking to each and every single individual of the Jewish people as well. So I bless us during this month of Chodesh Elul, as we are zoch, as we merit to hear the sounds of the shofar, that we understand the sensitivity of the sounds of the shofar as we envision them, and that we understand the symbolism of the sound of the shofar, inherent in the sound of the shofar, that the Netivot Shalom, the Shlomo Rebbe, describes so beautifully and so vividly, that we should be able to experience not only our calling out to Hashem during this month of Elul in preparation for Rosh Hashanah, but that we should feel Hashem's voice speaking to us not only through the sounds of the shofar, but through all of our ma'asim tovim, through all of our good acts. So I wish every single one of us the blessings from the Old City for a wonderful new year of good health, happiness, and success. Ketiva v'chatima tova, shana tova to everyone.